The story of the drought is it stopped raining. Progressively, the dams didn't fill up. It was really scary. It was absolutely terrifying.
DayZero was a projected day that we would run out of water to the extent that we would have had to shut off the supply of water to all the households and businesses and require everyone to come and collect water in buckets.
It took people a while to twig what was actually happening, and it was just a progressive panic.
Civil unrest potential in such circumstances is enormous.
DayZero brought climate change home with a big slap. It kind of put a little bit of urgency onto people's actions and activities and behavior. You just assume that when you turn the tap on, water's going to come out of it.
Water is our limiting factor in terms of agricultural production in our province. When there was a massive reduction in water availability, that sector had to adapt. We were just focusing on what could happen if we did not succeed. And that was just too terrible for us to really contemplate. Well, certainly it's very difficult to change public behavior. We drove a program to persuade our populace to use less water. It was a mixture of information, persuasion, threats of increased water tariffs.
People were not taking it seriously. It was like, this has happened before, it's all going to be fine, water will continue to come out of the taps. And when the messaging changed to DayZero, suddenly people were like, oh.
We constantly projected that if the current consumption rates were to continue, what was the day we would hit DayZero? But as we achieved the better consumption figures, that day moved out. And so people could see the impact of the reduction in consumption and that their efforts were contributing towards that.
The residents of Cape Town were a big part, and their behavior were a big part of cutting our water by 50%.
Once that day moved into the winter rainfall, we just hit a point at which we were no longer projecting a DayZero.
The important lessons from DayZero was communication and messaging. Goodness, you have to get that right from the beginning.
It was a question of keeping the public fully informed so that they would believe us.
One of the problems with these big shocks and stresses and resilience is how do you make that relevant to every person and every household?
We succeeded by informing public, making them partners with us so that they buy into the program that we wish to drive.
Partnerships also extremely important.
Local government doesn't always have the capacity to cope with a major shock. So you need to have proper relations in place with them, proper understandings with them on how to react in these circumstances.
I think one of the outcomes of the drought has been the recognition that we need to plan for complete uncertainty. So there was always this thing of, there's never going to be a scenario where we're never going to have any rain. Now we actually have to consider that as an option.
When a disaster strikes, the key thing that you need to do is, first of all, having prepared yourself for these potential shocks. And are you then ready with a program, with systems in place to respond to it? Climate change, urbanization, technological change, globalization.
Drought, unemployment, poverty, urban health, and mental health is a really big one in Cape Town.
All of these issues are driving uncertainty and change, and so we need to be resilient to be able to cope with any stress and shocks that come to us.
As a city, we need to be thinking ahead, and how do we do that? We do it through a resilience lens.
So the Cape Town Resilience Strategy was developed coming out of the drought. We had a lot of lessons that we learned during that drought period, but this strategy is far beyond just looking at drought situations.
A lot of those bits and pieces that you put in place are the same bits that you'd put in place for any of the other shocks or stresses that would happen. For example, we are focusing on making Cape Town's food security more resilient.
A resilient food system is crucial to have nutrition for all of the people of the city.
One of the pillars that was identified, which then speaks to food security specifically, is the whole idea of a compassionate and holistically healthy city. Our goal is to make it possible for all Cape Townians to have access to nutritious, healthy food so that they can live the lives that they want to live.
The drought, we learn our water supply only came from one source. What we need for the future is greater diversity of supply. All of those learnings from the drought will contribute towards better food production.
Resilience is something that must be integrated into every aspect of a city, whether it's spatial planning, financial planning, infrastructure planning. They all, in some way or another, interconnect and influence each other.
So if you're in another city somewhere out there, the key thing that you need to do is, first of all, having prepared yourself for these potential shocks through a resilient strategy, diversifying, get your population on your side, and don't try and do it alone.